With the first DLC of Season 4, Seeds of Change, we got a new modular building in the new world, the Hacienda, which you can see on the screen now. This new Hacienda is basically a sort of a palace mixed with Bright Harvest mixed with Dockland. If you don't know what I mean by that, don't know why I'm talking about a mix between those things, don't hesitate to check after this video the video that will be posted in the video description below where I recap all of the Hacienda part. But today we will focus on one part of it, on the palace part of it. You can build one Hacienda per island, and in this Hacienda you can choose between 5 policies. Here you can select to impact your whole island. It is one important thing to note is that indeed this policy will impact the whole island and not just what's inside the radius of the Hacienda. Now, what you may be wondering is, are they useful? Are they useless? Which one to use in what context? And that's exactly what we're going to cover today. Right off the bat, I do want to tell you that I think personally they are a lot less useful than the one that we had in the old world for the actual palace. But having said that, some of them are indeed quite useful in some situation. So let's discuss this and you can see which one you may want to use in your situation. Starting with the first one, Dietary Education Initiative. It will affect all of the New World residences on your island, on this island, and it will reduce the needs for fried plantain and tortillas by 30%. So this is important, this is not all needs, only fried plantain and tortillas, and it's not by 100%, it's only by 30%. So you can already see that it is indeed somewhat useful, but also not that useful. Well, first of all, both the fried plantain and tortillas can be imported via Dockland for pretty cheap. You know, it's 1 to 4 and 1 to 14 for penny farthing, for example. And you actually don't need that many. Look here, this is wicked world record with 8.8 million population. It once again only hesitate to check in the video description below after I have a video showcasing this record. But anyway, in this record he has 100,000 obreros, which is way more than what you'll ever need. And with this 100,000 obreros, he only needs 100 fried plantain and 45 tortillas. So again, if you're thinking about Dockland, this is only 18 to 19 penny farthing. This is nothing. And lastly, again, this is only a 30%. So all in all, yes, if you're a casual player and you're struggling with your new world, sure, you can use this policy. Or if you don't like any of the other policies, sure, use that policy. It's a gain. You know, there's no negative impact of it, so you can use it for sure. But it's not going to open new records. It's not going to create a new meta like the policies of the palace did in their time. Second, the specialized lumberjack training. It will affect all of the lumberjack huts, but also all of the sawmills. That's an important thing, with both productivity and maintenance cost. Productivity plus 20%, the maintenance cost minus 20%. Starting with maintenance cost, honestly, I think completely useless. Both of these buildings have a maintenance cost of only $10 per minute. This is really nothing. I don't know why 20% is going to change anything in your game here. And then plus 20% productivity, once again, sort of for free, right? You're not losing anything by using it. So it's nice, but is that going to change anything? Well, probably not. If you're in your late game, you can have items that are much stronger than that. One interesting thing though is that the Hacienda is actually unlocked with your first obreros. So let's say in the early mid game, right? It's when you have your first artisans. Thus it could be before you have a lot of items, and in that case, you know, it will help a lot. But at the same time, you can make wood and timber pretty much in all regions. And it has a production cycles of only 15 seconds, right? So a 20% is really not changing that much. And then once again, if you're a min-maxer or if you're using Dockland, you can get both wood and timber via Dockland. Now let's say you're not using Dockland like I did in my scholar record of 3 million scholar last year, then I did needed some wood. I had one island that was producing all of the wood for cigars and telephone. Adding 20% would help a bit, basically making me go from 927 tons per minute to 1012 per minute. So that's a 9% increase overall for just a few tiles of the Hacienda, because you don't need to increase its radius for it to work on the whole island. That's pretty much the only way I see this being quite useful, otherwise you probably want to go with dietary education initiative so far. One small thing to notice is that you actually do need 100% attractiveness on the island for this policy to be available, versus this one is always available whatever your attractiveness. The building of the Hacienda itself provides 100 attractiveness to your island, so in most cases that will be enough to unlock it. But if you have on your island a lot of buildings decreasing the attractiveness, for example the fertilizer works, then you could go back to below 100 and not being able to unlock it. Number 3. Standard weights and measures. Affect the depots on your island by increasing the storage by 75. Honestly, in my opinion, the most useless of them all. I don't know what problem use case it is solving for, to be honest. In the new world, even the very small island like this one usually have huge arbor areas where you can fit tons of depots anyway. You know, this island again is one of the smallest islands you can have, and it can already fit 2,500. This one too, another very small one, even with some oil storage, an oil arbor, several piers on that side and on this side, I'm still able to have almost 2,000 of storage. And it's not like those depots are expensive. They cost 10 timber and 10 bricks, which even in the early mid-game shouldn't be a problem for you. And lastly, remember that you do need 450 attractiveness to unlock that policy, so that will take you some space, some effort, which on many islands like this one, you definitely don't want to spend that, right? Now, local assembly is an interesting one. When I first saw it, I was among the first to say, it's not needed. We have so many ways already to farm influence, in particular with the skyscrapers. But I was wrong. I admit it fully, I was wrong. Why? Because remember that you unlock the Hacienda around artisans, right? You have your first obreros, right? And at that time, you usually actually don't have a lot of influence or easy way to farm it. You don't have engineers, you don't have investors, definitely not skyscrapers, you probably don't have that many items and things like this. Now with this policy, you can solve this problem. You can farm influence in this early mid-game. So this local assembly affects Hacienda Obrera's quarters by providing +5 influence for each of those. So of course, step 1 is you need to have Obrera's quarters. You put this Hacienda Obrera's quarter all over in the radius of your Hacienda. And you won't need anything else. You can put a fire station, police station, hospitals on the outside, but that's all. Why? Because remember that your Hacienda is like a market. It provides a need, and therefore your houses won't get destroyed even if you don't give any resources at all, as long as you have this one, and you will have 7 per houses to be precise. Now, depending on the rivers, depending on the space, depending on how optimized you do it, you'll be able to fit between 150 and 250 of those houses in your maximum radius of 40. But despite this being one of the most difficult places to put it, you can see I've fitted 150. So I wanted to show you sort of it is possible. Then you will need 100,000 attractiveness to unlock this. That may seem like a lot. First of all, of course, the Hacienda gives you 100 as we mentioned earlier. The nature on your island usually provide between 1 and 200, but you're still a few hundred short. You could put some zoo and museum, but that's tedious, especially in this early mid-game. So step 2, we're going to min-max the attractiveness of something with items. You have a couple of solutions. An easy one is with chapels. You put 1 town hall and then as many chapels as you can around it. And then you're going to use some items. Which one you ask? Well, let's check. You can do Ctrl T, write chapel here, make sure you click on unknown if you don't know any of these items, then you'll see a number of items. There are a few that will provide attractiveness. This one +10 attractiveness per church or per chapel. This one +7. This one +7, and there's the last one here +5. Of course, if you can, it's great to have this one because it's +10. But this one actually is not available at traders. You need to research it or get it into expeditions or things like this. Versus this one here is actually available at trader, at Eli actually. So don't hesitate to just go to Eli and find it after a couple of tries. Depending on how many chapels you are able to fit, you may reach the 1000 directly, or you may need a second one, you'll see. So we are now at 12,000. Let's now select it. and as you can see, we are now 12,780. So I had 150 times 5. As I said, you can usually fit between 150 and 250, so you can get more than 1000 influence with one of these islands like this. And once again, it doesn't require any resources. Before we talk about the last one, as well as a very important secret at the end of the video, don't hesitate to smash the like button if you've been entertained or if that has been useful. It really does help a lot. Okay, now the last one, unloading permits. Affect all arbor buildings, so that means of course your main trading ports but also piers, with a loading speed plus 50%. So basically your ship will take less time at the port to unload and load resources. Similar to the standard weight and measure, it is one of those which in my opinion aren't that useful for a couple of reasons. First one is that yes, plus 50% does seem impressive, but do you really need? The limiting space in the New World wasn't really in the arbor area, it was those islands themselves. So basically, you can have less pier with this. But for what? What else are you going to put instead of those piers? 1 or 2 more depots? No, not really. But the second reason, which is more important in my opinion, is look at how much attractiveness you need. 1750 attractiveness to unlock it. For both min-maxer and casual players, that's a lot of attractiveness, that's a lot of space and efforts to put on your island for such a bonus. But again, before we conclude, there's something very important we do need to discuss. I've heard many people write or say that DLC 10 may not seem very useful with those policies, also with the fact that the generals or Brera quarters are not really worth it, because we need to wait for DLC 11 and 12, which will, for example, introduce a new tier of population, and then those policies will make sense, will shine. I fully disagree. Why? Because we've never seen that in the previous seasons. In my opinion, we've seen actually quite the contrary. Take Dockland, for example. Yes, Dockland is super strong, but it's not stronger with the addition of skyscrapers. On the contrary, none of the new goods that are needed for skyscrapers are actually available in Dockland. So all in all, when we introduced skyscrapers, it made Dockland less strong, because before skyscrapers you could import everything with Dockland and you didn't need anything, versus now with skyscrapers you can't do that anymore. So if the Hacienda is not strong today, in my opinion it will be even less strong with the final DLC of Season 4. I'm not saying the Hacienda is not strong at all, I'm saying those policies are, in my opinion, not strong and won't get stronger with the new DLC. There are actually a few things that the Hacienda is really good at, and I'm going to show that in my next videos. And lastly, I also disagree, because the Anno team has always been very clear that each DLC must be autonomous and independent, so I think this argument of we need another DLC to make this worth it doesn't make any sense to me. But of course, as always, I'm very keen to hear your thoughts about that in the comments below. And lastly, do note that there is actually an achievement, the DLC Lawgiver, that is linked to having all of those 5 policies active at the same time. Then, of course, maybe you do that and then you can stop using them if you don't like them. I hope this was useful, and I hope to see you next time.